Greetings. Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter.
All right, Speak Nerd and Enter. You know who we are. We got Mark. We got Rich. We got me, Sean, and as our special guest, our VIP guest, veteran of E-Day, 12th Dan in Rex Kwando, last in the playbill, first in your heart, the K-Man.
Up.
And props to anyone who knows Rex Kwando. It's a very...
Bow to your sensei.
That's right. Very secluded.
If they can throw a football over them mountains, I'll be impressed.
Gentlemen, this has been a week of Games Workshop putting out some big things. And as they did so, having some snafus I haven't seen from them before. And I wondered for a moment whether one of them might have been intentional in a way. In that, The End and the Death, when I got that, I started listening to, that one because I do it on audiobook. And of course, Dan Abnett and I forget the guy's name who does the reading. Really good job reading and all.
Jonathan Keeble.
Yeah. Man,
I like him.
That was a quick book, right? And then I realized that it wasn't that quick, and that there was a lot of parts in there that I thought to myself, wait a minute, did I miss something? Well, apparently I did, because the book was put out of order. So all the chapters in the audiobook were out of order, and some were missing. And I saw in the playlist, in the playlist, it went from 1 to 15 and then jumped to 70 something, or I forget.
Now I need to check.
So I was wondering at first. I was like, oh wait a minute, maybe that's something they're doing where you have to listen to it a second time to hear the rest of it, because those chapters don't show up until then. Something funky where it's supposed to emulate the warp messing with time, and now you get the other parts of it and all that. Nope, they just screwed it up. And so all the other stuff that was in the middle, missed out on all of that. Went directly to the ending, and listened to that, and then had to
That's
go
a shame.
And then had to go back and find out about the other. They emailed me afterwards because I asked them. I said, "Hey, is there any plans on fixing that?" And they said, "Yeah, go ahead on." This was like 3 days after, I bought it. All you do is go in and just delete everything, delete your cookies, and then download it again. It should be fine.
Did you get it from Audible
or Black
Library?
Library?
I got it from Black Library app.
Okay.
Really?
Because Audible doesn't make those kind of mistakes.
No, I was just curious. I got it through Apple Books, and I didn't have the problem, so I was just making sure. So.
Yeah, but Apple Books has an army of children working in that factory to make sure that all the numbers that they learn to count from.
Their hands are very delicate.
Yeah, they learned to count from 1 to 179 or whatever it was, and did so without error. They had enough proofreaders for that. And in England, they don't have that many people, so
excellent.
Could only go through enough to screw it up. So anyway, but that was the experience.
They clean chimneys really well.
They clean chimneys.
Yeah. So anyway, that bummed me out, man. That really did, because
I'm sorry that happened to you. I didn't know. Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
That's a weird one.
Yeah. Anyway, they also had I didn't see any of it, the reveals and that sort of thing. Did any of you see any of that stuff? Was there anything good?
I did.
That? Okay, what's up, Rich? What'd they have?
If we want to talk about, they had quite a few game systems. I think there were 7. For 40K, they did Dark Angels. So there's going to be some new Dark Angels, including a brand new plastic Terminator set with all sorts of neat stuff in it.
Oh, I heard something about that. Yeah. Did you see pictures of it?
Yeah. It looks good.
Yeah.
They look good. Yeah, they're all they're very Baroque with lots of big weapons and stuff like that.
New fix them then, or what do you do?
What do you mean?
You said they were broke.
Baroque.
Baroque.
I know. Yes, I know. Yeah.
Yes, you do have to fix them with their Baroques.
Yes. Oh, by the
but
way, Mark, just a quick aside. I really liked your quickness and your deadpan delivery for the yes and keep turning left until you turn right comment.
Hmm,
Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
That was really well done, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Rich.
That's all right. You get the new character. They Primaris him, not Azrael, the Grand Repenter, the chaplain. The one that Mark Gibbons did a picture of, and they basically did the same. Took his artwork and used it again many years ago. For the old world, you get a brand new spanking giant plastic lich and zombie dragon, like undead dragon. Horus Heresy jump pack Marines, full size ones.
Are they still going with the snake bodied?
No, no, it looks much different. It's got kind of a crocodilian head with a big Egyptian frill on the back.
Yeah.
And it's super tall. It looks really cool.
Is it like super thin or is it bulked out?
It's bones, all bones.
Yeah, it's
no
skeleton.
Completely dry. Yeah, completely dry.
But I mean, thin bodied or?
Oh no, it's huge. It's not a you can't tell because you don't know where the flesh was. I'd say it's more sinuous than bulky. So it looks very good. And it's got a giant howdah. You could put a Tomb King or a Lich Priest on the back, and you get the foot model with it for both of them, which is pretty cool. So you'll be able to use both. What else did they do? Some kill team stuff. Night Lords, a whole unit of Night Lords, but not Primaris Night Lords. They're the old ones. Which
You
is
skipped over the new Necron Cryptek. How dare you?
Oh yes. The Necron. Yes, there's a Necron Cryptek.
Boring.
The guy who controls time from the guy from Infinite and the Divine. Mark, you'd know who he is. I forget his name.
Yeah, he's a buddy of mine.
Trazen the Infinite?
No, not Trazen. The other one, the one that controls time. He's a chronomancer.
Begins with an O, I think, right?
I can't remember.
I can't remember.
It's a Necron. They're all Terminators, as far as I'm concerned. Something for
Orican is his name.
Orican, the Diviner. That's it. Yep, Orican, the Diviner. Thank you, Mark, with your Necron knowledge. 20 million years old. That was about it. They also had something for the Underworlds. It was a Cool Boys gang, but that was about it that I can remember.
Yeah, did you do the Flesh Eater Quartz dudes for Age of Sigmar?
I mentioned them. Yeah, the Flesh Eater Quartz. Yeah,
some cool ghoul-looking dudes.
Giant monster. The guy from the old edition, from 8th edition, that was never made. Their leader. They never made a model for him. They only described him and did a picture of him, but they finally done a model for him, and he is huge. He looks great. But it's a monstrous piece of plastic.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the Horus Heresy jump pack dudes. They look pretty cool.
They look great.
Very old school beaky Marines, studded shoulder pad.
Everyone can have a combat shield. The sergeant can have not one but 2 lightning claws, so you can make him the double-fisted Wolverine of death. And they look very good. They redesigned the jump pack so they're very sleek, and they look like they'll be a much easier to paint. The old ones were kind of an atrocity. If you didn't paint the pack separately, you were going to have an issue. Just trying to get in the nooks and crannies. But all in all, it was a pretty strong showing. A lot of people were disappointed. They announced the codexes as well. So the next codex is coming out after the spring. The ones that were announced, Sisters of Battle and one other. There was a mystery one, Sisters of Battle, and the Tau, I believe, were coming out for the summer. So,
did you say people were disappointed though?
Yeah, some people were disappointed that they didn't show anything for the Adeptus Mechanicus comes out in the winter, this winter. Show any new models for the Mechanicus, and people were, because they're going to get probably a big refresh. So people were a little disappointed they didn't see anything from something upcoming very soon. But I think they wanted to kind of reserve that for the next few weeks. You know, they want to really push that for their holiday shopping bonanza they always do every year. They didn't show anything from Legions Imperialis, which is the game that I'm most excited about, the new Epic. It comes out today. It's pre-orders today, so hopefully I'll be able to snag a box because I think they'll be a little limited. There's a huge snap. You want to talk about snafus? That one, they had to repack the entire run. And I'm extremely curious as to why. I may have to tap some of my context to get the real story as to why they had to repack it. I heard some rumors that there were some
something about that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I heard some rumors that the rule book had some risque statements in it that someone took offense to, so they had to take out all the rule books and repack them all with rule books. But I don't know if that's true or not. What I do know is that the game looks very fun. Back and forth. It has a mystery. One of the things I like most about it is it has the mystery orders reveal phase. So you put your orders down in secret, and then you flip them all over to figure out, you know, then you take your turns, but you don't know what orders the guy's placing on each unit until the reveal phase, which is kind of cool. I always enjoy that about Epic. That kind of grand strategy, back and forth, fog of war type of thing.
Did you like
that's
that
about
sort of thing, Mark?
Yeah, I didn't mind it. I always like the scale more than anything else. I like being able to, because with the 25, 32 millimeter, it's like, okay, we're playing on a table. You got your pile of guys, I got my pile of guys, and they literally start like 18 inches from each other, and there's no real fire and movement. It's
the alpha strike.
It's all determined in your placement, right? Oh, I'm going to put my guy out, these fast attack units out on the right so that they can flank, but you're not flanking anybody. You know what I mean? So this just feels a little bit more, I don't know, tactical. When you actually have a smaller scale, you can do more and kind of, like it's always a slugfest at the tabletop level. Here's my 2,000 points. We're going to slug against your 2,000 points. And it's a good time, but it's not, some tactical grand strategy thing is more in the rules than in the fire and movement, right?
Yeah, it's not like you're
strangely enough, that was
right. Yeah, you're not pulling off a blitzkrieg or something like that.
Strangely enough, that was actually captured in the Middle Earth strategy battle game. That kind of ability to do wheeling maneuvers and stuff like that. At that scale, but I agree with you that in this smaller scale, it's one of the reasons I like War Master so much. It's probably my favorite scale, this 8 millimeter, 10 to 10 millimeter scale of combat. Plus the fact that I get to use all the Titans I've painted in the last year. So, but they're not the same as in Adeptus Titanicus, where it's all kind of about control of energy and your shields and things like this. They're just a big honking thing that goes on the battlefield and kind of stomps over everything smaller than it. A couple of friends of mine got some early glimpses at the rules and played a few games, and they give it some high marks. They say it's really well done. Probably the best version of Epic since my favorite, which was Space Marine, the second edition. That was absolutely my favorite game in that scale that's ever been done, and it looks like this one might be a contender, but we'll have to see. They say the one thing he did say was that warp missiles, which if you want to speak real nerd here, the warp missiles, they can destroy anything. The vortex missiles or the warp vortex missiles, they can.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why they wouldn't.
Well, it's just the fact that they're super rare and stuff, but they shouldn't be able to take out like a Psi Titan, but apparently they can. They're very, very detrimental to anything that they get shot at. So,
what if the Psi Titan disbelieves?
I agree. I think it should roll a saving throw.
I can't believe Ben Barr's killed by this vortex missile.
So there you go. Yeah, that was it. It was a good preview. It was kind of short. So a small criticism. They had an American fella who seems like a super nice guy as one of the hosts for the reveal, and a British fella. And you've never seen that kind of the imbalance between the British fellow was very reserved and proper, and the American guy was all over the place. And you can see like the difference. And you could tell the British guy was kind of like, it seems like you're always excited. And the American guy's like, yeah, I am. Yeah. It's like, oh, you have no You have no chill, buddy. No chill at all. But it was very good. You know, I give props to both of them. They both did a fine job. It's just you could see the difference in the cultures on display right.
So you're saying the American did a better job then?
I'm saying my countryman was exactly as I'd imagine him to be at all times.
All right. Anyway, yeah. Okay. Hey, let me ask you guys something. Because I wanted to ask your opinions on the whole thing with Mr. Fantastic. To jump to another universe there. I'm sure you've heard about the whole thing with Pedro Pascal and him in talks. It hasn't been, confirmed or anything, but him in talks to do Mr. Fantastic for the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. Now, I'll be honest with you, I haven't since I don't know the beginning of the Marvel efforts after after Infinity War. To be honest with you, Endgame it wasn't as good for me as I guess it was for others. But ever since then, it seems like it's been kind of a downhill journey with Marvel for me. So I haven't been as into the movies at this point. But I was kind of looking forward to the Fantastic Four. So I was, listening to the news on that, and a lot of people wanted John Krasinski, and sure, that's fine. He's one of those who could play Mr. Fantastic, and I don't have an issue with that. There's a lot I think who would fit the bill for that sort of thing, and I don't mind him at all. I think he's a good actor, and I think he could do that. But what do you think about Pedro Pascal as that? What do you think of him in that role?
Okay, I'll start. I'll do it. Pedro Pascal, I like him as an actor, right?
Mhm.
So he's been in a number of good things. I don't think he's necessarily showing his acting chops in The Mandalorian, but I've seen him in Narcos and some other things. Like, he's a good actor. He's a known face. He's gonna put some butts in the seats. You know what I'm saying? Now, Reed Richards is a white guy, and Pedro Pascal is apparently not. Do I care about that? No, I really don't. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about that at all. My real concern is, okay, why are you making this change? Is it because he's the best actor for the role, or is it because we're playing want to, change how, like going back, you put Jessica Alba in a previous Fantastic Four movie as a blonde-haired white woman with blue eyes, and I'm like, that's just, you don't hire Jessica Alba to play a blonde woman with blue eyes, right? You hire an actress that is a blonde, or could what I'm saying? I'm like, I wish they wouldn't have tried to make Jessica Alba Sue Storm. If you're going to swap it out, just let her be Jessica Alba, and maybe Sue Storm doesn't have blonde hair. You know what I mean? Like, they messed it up there. My concern is they're going to do. So you want to hire Pedro Pascal? I have no issues with it. He's a great actor. I like him. We got a little taste of Kaczynski. Cool, he was fine. But I kind of like. Actually, I kind of like the subverted expectations of, and the other guy that played him in that movie with Jessica Alba, he was forgettable. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't do anything for me at all. So maybe, on the whole, I'm a fan. I have no issues with it at all. But Hollywood has had such a track record of making these choices for the wrong reasons that there's automatically some trepidation on my part, just because you're like, okay, yeah, let's mess with this. Who's going to play Wolverine? A small Asian woman? Come on. Right? And so we have concerns about that. But I like everything about Pedro Pascal. I absolutely think he can pull this role off. For personally, I have no issues other than this little, like, okay, how much is the, script doctors and the behind the scenes people and the, we got to check some boxes off, messing with who's playing who. I Hollywood is, I hope, learning some of their lessons with some of the recent failures. Who knows? But like I said, on the whole, I'm cautiously optimistic. Let's leave it at that.
With Pedro Pascal, I could see him playing Reed Richards. I could see that.
Yeah.
with the facially and all that stuff, I mean, comparing that with the comics, yeah, I don't really have an issue with that. I think him with the gray on the side, and
Hmm.
all
Yeah, I
that
can
would
see
be
it.
fine. I don't know if he's tall enough or whatever, but that really didn't bother me so much. You know what bothered me out of the first one was the original
Hmm.
Fantastic. I'm not talking about the original,
I
but
know.
was the acting more than anything else. The acting
Yeah.
and the directing and the script and all that was awful, and
Right.
just ruined
Oh, and that
everything.
product placement about putting a Hemi in your flying car, I was just like, oh
Yeah,
my gosh, come on,
yeah.
cut.
The and the follow up with the Silver Surfer was awful. We're gonna all this power comes from his board, and all that stuff. And yeah, it was just very dumb and ham-fisted Hollywood stuff that was done with it that
Yeah.
just kind of ruined the whole thing. I think if you're going to have an actor doing something like, man, you can't go wrong with Pedro Pascal. He's strong. I mean, I remember the first time I saw him was when he did uh from Game of Thrones.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Martel.
Oberyn Martell.
Oberyn, Prince Oberyn. Yeah, when he did that, did a great job. Love that.
Right.
And then of
Hmm.
course, as you mentioned, the Mandalorian. That's not really an acting
Right.
stretch or any. I
Right.
mean, that's just
But
Baby
Narcos
Yoda.
and Last of Us and
Last of Us is Last of
yeah,
Us is
yeah.
the other one that I think is a real demonstration of his abilities, and he's great at those kinds of characters and all. I think he'd be
Hmm.
wonderful with
And
that.
let's look
So
a little bigger, right? There's a lot of actors in Hollywood vying for roles,
yeah,
and everybody wants to, I think, be in the Marvel movies in some. But it's the biggest franchise
And
out there,
more.
right? And so you getting to be as a part of that as an actor is probably like, oh, this will be a cool thing for the resume and for the visibility and these kind of things. And that's worked out for some actors, right? Robert Downey
yeah.
Jr. And it hasn't worked out for some other actors, and maybe that's not necessarily their fault because I think the actors are all good, but if you give them a role that doesn't let them shine,
Yeah.
if the role doesn't live up to the actor, it's kind
See,
of a
that's
wasted
No, I mean, but
opportunity.
I mean, you both have said it, right? I mean, Pedro Pascal's not going to detract
no,
Right,
from the role, right?
right.
no.
And
Agreed.
the thing that happens for Marvel and by extension Disney, their parent, is the material the actors are given to work with. I
See,
mean,
that's the thing. That's exactly what I was going to say. Is that
yeah,
you have the actors with someone like Peter Pascal. The thing that really concerns me is not so much. It's not him. Not even not so much. He doesn't
Yeah.
concern me. What concerns me is the same thing that happened the first time, which is the movie itself sucked. It was written badly. The direction was not good. However that happened, I'm sure everybody wanted to make a good movie, but however it happened, it didn't come out good. And that is what I'm worried about with this. And I don't want to waste, because I'm afraid in the current phase or the current genre of MCU stuff that they're putting out, that it's going to be more of the same. And it's just going to be very disappointing, especially with Fantastic Four.
Well,
So,
that is one of their
So,
bigger properties, right?
so the
Let's be
fan,
honest. If you're talking about what is it, Jessica Jones or something like that, or Power Man and Iron Fist, like those are not A level Marvel properties, right? But Fantastic Four, Avengers, X Men, right? Those are like the top three, right? And
yeah.
so, like, I would really hope that they're bringing out their A game if you're going to do Fantastic Four, right? I mean, so Eternals, okay,
I mean,
nobody read that comic book, come on. Even
It's
Guardians of the
no,
Galaxy, nobody read Guardians of the Galaxy, like,
no, nobody did. So the thing about the Fantastic Four, some people argue that the beginning of the Marvel universe, in history, was the Avengers. Honestly, it was the Fantastic Four. When people think about where the Marvel universe started, that kind of action-packed, character-driven interplay was really formed in the family unit of the Fantastic Four. Um, I do not think I disagree with both of you. I don't think that Pedro Pascal is the right person for the role. I don't think he's going to be. I think he will not be able. Not only
Is
and
that because of your
contrary,
racism or for some other reason?
no racism. He's white. I consider him white. He's just of Hispanic heritage. So you guys, you said he wasn't white. I think he is white. He's his race doesn't. No,
he's a white Hispanic, like the dude in Florida. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay. We can go down that road if you want. Let's keep going. So but I don't think he will be able to resist inject because he's proven in his track record that he can't resist injecting himself into the role, his own opinions in other roles.
What do you mean? Like what?
With his political opinions, he actually did that while he was playing the Mandalorian. He decided to spout off about his political opinions, whereas Gina Carano did not really the same thing, but something similar, and she got castigated for it, and he didn't.
What did he do in Mandalorian that was political that way?
No, while he was playing in the Mandalorian is what I'm saying. Is that
Rich is not saying that he did something in the show or as the character acting. He was like out on social media. He was saying stuff while he was.
Well, yeah. You can't look. I know
it's not that I can
and all that, but I mean, you can't blame the man for. Look, if he's got his own political opinions and stuff, that's fine. So many actors have opinions and stuff that I don't agree with, right? But
yes,
I mean, the list of them is huge. But his work and all of that, I think, is really good. And that's I don't disagree. I'm basing it on.
I don't disagree. I just don't think that the work that he's done and the character that he portrays, the types of characters he portrays, I don't know if Reed Richards is a good fit for him. But aside from that, the point being is that they have many other options that they could choose for who to play Reed Richards. People that are more suited, I don't know, not just physically, because physically he's kind of the right type, I guess. Dark-haired, sort of thin. I guess he could lose a ton of weight. Reed Richards is supposed to be a string bean. I mean, that's what the thing calls him all the time: string bean, stretch out, all that stuff.
I think personally, I think that's why most people like the idea of Krasinski is not because they thought, oh, he looks like Mr. Fantastic, because he kind of doesn't, but because he's so thin and tall. And that fits, right? But like I said, I like Pascal, like you guys. I like Pascal's work in other places. Do I think he's the right person for this role? I don't think so. I think you have to have somebody who plays this role in particular, and all the roles in the Fantastic Four. They should actually care about the character to some extent. Now, could he change his mind? May he be a giant fan and I don't know about it? Maybe. But I think that kind of love of the character needs to be expressed for this one in particular, since they had such a hard time in the last two phases, like you mentioned. I think they really need to bring their A game to this and find actors and performers that are going to have some idea of the history, some love for the history of the character, and somebody who wants to play this role. It's like, oh, it's been my dream to be, Mr. Fantastic, or to be part of the Fantastic Four, the most iconic quartet in the history of comics. See, I think the biggest things for me personally. Oh, Kelly, you've been trying to talk for a long time. Hang on, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just to go off of what you said, Rich. Maybe he's not the right guy for the role. Maybe he is the right guy for the role. I still stand by the idea that he's not going to detract from whatever you put on the screen. Pedro Pascal is one of those. His acting chops are so good. He's gonna bring to life as best he can whatever you put down on paper. The bigger concern for the studio, in my opinion, is less who you have in front of the camera and more about what you give them to work with. Because as we look at Marvel, and we look at Disney in totality as how it's handled Star Wars and others, they're not giving these people much to work with. Let's be honest. I mean, The Mandalorian turned into how many stars can we pack into a show just to get people to keep watching the bloody thing? Yeah. So, I'm more concerned about that, if I'm honest. I think the issue of who plays it, be it John Krasinski or Pedro Pascal or, frankly, anybody else, get Michael Caine for all I care. But, just have them do a good job with it.
99 years old.
Just give them something to work, because they're not giving people something to work with.
Any movie and I think with Michael Caine and Christopher Walken will work.
Yeah, that's true.
Christopher Walken, get him to do it.
Yeah.
Well, my real concern is, okay,
Walking
if Pedro
Doom.
Pascal's good, who's going to play the other three? Right, because
He'll play all
part
of
of the
them.
Fantastic Four is the dynamic between the four of
Yeah.
them, and so if Pedro Pascal's great, and then you drop the ball on some of the others, and I haven't heard who some of the others might be, but like
Neither
that's
have
a
I.
concern. You can have Pedro Pascal delivering his A game with a good script,
Look,
Well,
and
I think we already named it,
it's
Mark.
got
I
to be
mean, you've got
retold for
Pedro
modern audience.
Pascal, you got
Sue
John
Storm will be played
Krasinski,
by Christopher Walken.
Walken, and yeah,
Michael
and
Caine
Michael Caine.
as the
Now
Thing.
Christopher Walken should be the Thing.
Yeah.
Michael Caine should be Sue Storm. Yeah, that would be good.
Michael
You know what
Cera
they're gonna.
as
You know what they're gonna.
Johnny Storm.
But you know what they're going to do with this. You know, the Fantastic Four has been described as the first family of Marvel Comics, right? You know that some screenwriter, some producer is going to say, we need to retell this for modern audiences because the old white guy who invented them just put it for the modern audience. And it's going to screw it up.
Yeah.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Their last go around with Fantastic Four flopped, right? I mean, that was not a great outing.
All of them have been terrible.
Right. So first family of Marvel
They're
Comics,
over,
I
yeah.
think not. I think Marvel really struck gold with its whole Infinity series, you know, with the Iron Man movies and on. But I think that their problem here, and I know I've harped on this before, but you know, take me at my word and thank me later for saving you all money at the box office. I think they really that was their peak. They peaked at that. They didn't have a whole hell of a lot before, and frankly, a lot of the Marvel movies that came up before the Infinity series were really kind of crap. And then afterwards, what have they gotten?
How dare you talk about
after
like
Infinity
that?
War? It's been, you know, like if we've been waiting for him to set up this Kang thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's been too slow of a burn, in my opinion. You know, like if you're gonna do Kang Conqueror, like knock yourself out, let's get it done. But oh my gosh, like nothing. You know, I don't feel like he's this big threat like Thanos was.
No,
they're trying to set it up like he was.
Great character.
And now they're
He's always
pivoting
gonna be
because of the personal issues with the actor playing Kang. So last I heard, they're like, we're going to switch over here and do something completely different. So like, it's
Well,
so
from what I
post Infinity
understand-
War, it has not been good for them.
Yeah, it's a train wreck.
From what I understand, that whole thing's been dropped. I don't know much about it, but I remember reading that whatever the issue was with that, the person decided, no, we're not. I don't know. Back at whatever. It's
back
gone away
into it.
or whatever.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Kang's never been a big. I don't like Kang.
He's a B-rate character. He always has been.
He looks dumb. He looks just. I never liked his character design or any of that. I never felt a threat from him. Thanos was a great villain.
Right.
Thanos was awesome. And see, that's what I was going to say is that a movie's only as good as its villain.
Yeah.
This kind of movie, you know? And
yeah, it's just a shame that Marvel doesn't have any good villains anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, Fantastic Four has one of the best villains ever, and everybody knows it in Mole Man. And if we can get...
You had me going there for a minute. You had me going.
I was honestly thinking you were going to say Paste Pot Pete, but that was just me. The Trapster.
But if actually they got a couple of characters that I always thought were really intriguing, which of course Dr. Doom, but I always liked Molecule Man too. I always thought his character was very intriguing, right?
Well, Secret Wars is coming, so you know they're gonna probably pull him out for Secret Wars.
I don't have a lot of faith in that.
I'm just saying,
but I hope,
that's where he's big.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in them doing something good with it.
Oh no,
but
no.
Dr. Doom is a wonderful villain. If you're going to have somebody who's close to a cool factor, maybe not threat level, but cool factor like Thanos, Dr. Doom would be it, right? You got some meat on the bone there. You can really work with a character like that. So the thing for me is two things. Who's playing the thing and how are you doing it? Are you going to do it more? Are you doing the commish version of the thing with the big foam skin suit, or are you going to do something more Hulk-like, right? Or are you going to do something where you're going to go all in and try to do something that looks really good? Because you got the opportunity. You can do it. We all saw how Thanos looked. So you can do that. And Dr. Doom. and how good is he going to be? You also got Galactus, right? But that's an overarching kind of Thanos level threat that you
Yeah.
would have
Well,
for the
Magneto.
arc, but so many. But I mean,
Yeah.
of course, Doctor Doom is the one everybody thinks of first, and they
For
have
Fantastic
referenced.
Four. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they have referenced it, like in Moon Knight and all that, Latveria and all of that. So who would they have play him? What's the story they're going to give him? Is he going to keep the mask on, or is it going to be another one of those things like they had in the first ones, where he only had it on for a little bit and took it off, and you know that whole
Well, I
thing?
mean, he has to have it off at some point because you need to establish the connection between him and Richards, right? Or you
Well,
should.
but you don't have to. You don't have to.
You don't
I
have
mean,
to, but you should.
I don't know about that. I don't know if you need that. I don't remember as a kid ever really seeing Doctor Doom's face. I remember seeing him in the
No,
armor.
you never did.
Yeah, I remember seeing him in the
Never
armor and hearing that he got his face burned and all that crap. And
Well, that was
so he keeps his armor on. And I always
that
thought,
was
oh, okay, that's cool. He looks awesome. He
That's
looks
right.
really
They
cool.
stole that
He
from
does all
Cobra
this.
Commander.
well, that was the great. No, it was
And
yeah,
they sold
that was
insurance.
Yeah.
that was the great reveal, though. I think John Byrne was the one that injected that in. Is that actually his face was burned, but it was just a small imperfection on one.
I know.
Yeah, I thought that was, and that was his whole character was built around that he was marred. You know,
I know.
his perfection was
But
marred.
that to me was that part to me was unnecessary. Don't even need that. I know the whole thing was supposed to be he's such a narcissist that he can't have a little mark on his face and he's just going to think it's all ruined and all that. Whatever. That screams to me of a very weak villain who's like that. That just.
Well,
I don't see
when he
him
was
running a country who's sitting there, freaking out about a small mark on his face.
Yeah.
when he was first revealed, he was so horrifying that people would scream in terror and run away when they'd see his face. Because there were a couple times, he was so horribly disfigured. So I understand, but that's the way they played it in I think in one of the movies they played it that way, where he just had.
Yeah, and to me, the guy who can overcome something like that, right? A really disfiguring incident, like the Darth Vader thing. You go through some life-altering, really massive event like that, doesn't stop you one bit. Your determination is such that you're pushing on, and so frighteningly so that you're able to become a villain, even with this very sympathetic story or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah,
that I found to be a much more interesting character. So, the whole John Byrne thing, okay, I know what he was going for, but it never really landed with me. It just seemed over the top and unnecessary. But Dr. Doom himself, I always thought was a really cool character, especially with the magic and all that stuff,
Well, he ties into a bunch of different universes, right? He can tie into the Doctor Strange and Mephisto and that sort of stuff, with his, the sorceress stuff kind of came later on. He was always kind of supposed to be the rival to Reed Richards for the techno mastery that he had. But he was, his morality was different than Richards, and that's what made him a villain.
Yeah, he made more sense.
Yeah. But it's interesting, the whole idea of Latveria being this totalitarian government over there somewhere in Central Europe, but the fact that the citizens, some of them actually love Latveria, some of them hate it, and then some of them actually like, no, he keeps us safe from everybody. So it's an interesting. There's a whole bunch of interesting things that they could tackle there.
Yeah, you don't have the Avengers coming around dropping cities on people.
Yeah. There was that. That was a problem, wasn't it? Or blowing up buildings, or whatever. It's interesting to me that, and then there's the connection to Namor. I could still go on about that, but I'm not gonna.
I can't remember. Was Latveria landlocked?
Yes, I believe it was. Yeah, it's Central Europe, if I remember correctly. It might have been on one of the seas. I can't remember the fictional geography as well as I should. But if I remember correctly, it wasn't against a water source. That's one of the reasons why it was difficult to attack, is that you had to come in from other places, overland. Which is why people were constantly flying into it. But the whole idea, there's so many connections that Doom brings up, right? Being part of the anti-Illuminati, and the fact that they could bring forward the whole Illuminati. They have most of the pieces. They don't have Professor X yet, although according to the Marvels, spoilers, they will. And they have, I think, almost all of the other characters, except for how they did Black Bolt, which still rankles me. Speaking of which, did you guys see that they're talking about casting the Sentry?
No.
Yes. So
No,
a lot
who
of
are
people
they?
hate on. Yeah, they have a Korean guy that they want to cast as Sentry.
Alright.
Just
Oh, wasn't
going
that was the guy from The Walking Dead, right?
guy from The Walking Dead. Yeah, Yun. The
Yeah.
guy's name is Yun. Yeah. So
The
yeah,
one who got
they're
his-
talking
the
about.
one who got hit in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not big enough
Yeah.
to be Sentry.
That was my first thought too. I
Well,
was like, huh?
Robert Reynolds, the Sentry's alter ego. So the Sentry is one of my
okay.
kind of.
Okay, I got
Yeah.
you.
He's a small, like little nebbish, as they would call him back in the day. He's like a nothing. It's only when he becomes the Sentry or his alter ego that he becomes bigger than life. So
Yeah.
he could play Robert Reynolds. I mean, again, not how portrayed in the comics. He's blonde haired, blue eyed, kind of Captain America looking guy. It's just one of those things that you look at it and it's immediately you might have a visceral reaction. It's like it's nothing like what they've portrayed in the past. Like, why make the changes for whatever reasons, right? But if they get an actor who could take it, he's one of my favorite characters. A lot of people hate him, and because he's like, oh, he's Marvel's Superman. But there's a whole psychological side to the Sentry that I think has been portrayed really well. That they haven't really like the idea of mental issues in someone that powerful, which other series have broached, but the Sentry did it really well. The split personality kind of ego alter ego type of thing. So I hope they do him credit. I've always liked him, but we'll see. He actually ends up being a villain in the Marvel universe just because of his nature. So it's one of those things where they have a story there already written for them. Whether they take advantage of it, who knows? They don't tend to do that.
Yeah, I like Sentry for that same reason or I find more intriguing for that same reason. Because of that. Marvel, to be honest, they got a lot of Superman ripoffs. They got a lot of them. So pick your poison. So people say, oh, it's just Superman ripoff. They got plenty of them. This one I found more interesting because of the whole
mental issues,
psychological issues that he's dealing with. And what does that mean when you have someone that powerful who has those kind of mental issues? But yeah, I don't know. I don't have an issue with it as long as I guess he's got good enough acting. My first reaction to it was that he's not big enough. But I have that reaction to a lot of guys playing Superman.
Right.
So even Henry Cavill, let's be honest, everyone who's played Superman is not big enough to have played Superman. So,
Christopher Reeve, you look at him and you wouldn't think, you're like, huh?
Nah.
You know what I mean? Like,
George Reeves kind of set the standard, right? Because he was a big bodybuilder, like big dude.
George Reeves actually looks like George Reeves I always found 50s era Superman looking kind of dude, the Superman that we all know and always love, don't you dare say different. The Superman that we all know is a big guy, he's just
6'4".
He's been feeding on the sun for a long time. He's really healthy. So all the Supermans that have ever been, if you jammed them all together, wouldn't be big enough to be, who Superman actually looks like in the comics. But even so, that was my first reaction when you said that was, wow, that's like a big difference. That's a huge difference between those two.
Well, Robert Reynolds is supposed to be small and skinny, but speaking of Superman, and you since you brought it up, have all of you guys seen the Flash movie?
No.
Yeah.
Have any of you? None of you have seen it?
Mark
seen it, Mark?
For me. Mark saw it for me.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, it's long. It's I think it's over 2 hours. I wanted to watch it because I like the Snyderverse, so I watched the whole thing. And speaking of Superman, the best character, the movie's atrocious. I'm gonna flat out say the movie's atrocious. It's cut together. It has so many pieces which could be good that when it all strung together in kind of a mess, it's awful. But the best thing in that entire movie is Supergirl. Supergirl, the girl that played her, she got a lot of heat for, oh, they put in Supergirl as a substitute and that sort of thing. Her performance is excellent. I really like it. She plays it's basically the Flashpoint story. So Superman is supposed to be kind of, when he lands, she lands, she gets captured by the government and stuck away from the sun. So she's like really weak and sickly. And they break her out and she just loses her mind. Now in the comics, she's almost mentally handicapped from being isolated for so long because they just didn't let her see anybody, right? In this case, she's a little bit more well adapted. She actually has a personality, which doesn't make sense for someone who's locked away for their whole life, why they would have the personality that she does. But her performance, I thought, she was a really good Supergirl. I was very impressed. And, it's one of those things where sometimes you get surprised by the person they put in. You're like, this is not going to work. And then they just kind of knock it out of the park. And I really do think she was the best part of that film. In a crappy film, she was a highlight. So, I'm willing to give Yun a chance as like for the Sentry, and the same thing with Pedro Pascal. I'm willing to give him a chance to see how he does, but they have to bring kind of you could tell that the girl that played Supergirl, she knew she was playing a very iconic character, and she kind of, it seems like she really liked what she was doing. Whereas I get the sense, I thought she felt like she was doing that, and I get the sense that some of these actors, they take these parts on, and it's like, it's a job. When there's people like us that really love these characters, and we want to see someone who's chosen, who's selected, and they don't even think that it's an honor or anything. They're just like, I was picked for a job, and they go and do it, which is fine. But for some of these characters, it's like people like us that are so invested in them.
But the actors don't get to control the writer's room, right?
No,
in many ways, there's a large disconnect there.
Yes.
You get the pages you're given and you perform them, right? So I mean,
yes.
And I've seen lots of actors who have no connection to what's going on. They don't understand the story in the least, but they do a good job playing the role because they're actors, right?
That's what I'm talking about. Is that they're invested in it. Like I'd say that the what was written for Supergirl wasn't the best. It wasn't very good, but she brought a fire to the part that I was happy to see, that somebody who, even if the writing is poor, someone who really cares about the character, they can kind of bring it in there. You know what I mean? They can bring something to it that even though the writers might write it as the blandest thing ever, it's white toast with mayo, they bring something of themselves to the part and an investment in the character that they're playing that, it's kind of a professionalism sort of thing. In my opinion,
a mayo sandwich is pretty good.
Yeah. But, like I said, like her the way the character was written for that part in a movie, which was not very good and was you could tell that it was made on the cutting room floor. They're like, we got to stick something together because Ezra Miller might go to jail. But she was actually I was surprised. She was the highlight of the film, and I didn't expect that. So props to the actress for doing a good job, in my opinion, for a character that I honestly.
I feel bad though for actors like that, because you'll see them periodically in movies, right? And I appreciate your comments about her in this one, but I feel bad for those actors that are doing a really good job in a really crap movie.
Yes.
What an offense to talent, really, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's a shame, a lot of it, it's like we've talked about, a lot of it comes from the producers and the writers having a vision which is not aligned to the character, right?
Right.
And it's just like, well, it's my expression of the character. Okay, but you can bend a character, but you shouldn't break it. And that's my biggest problem with Namor.
I will.
Well, that's my biggest issue with what they did with Namor is they bent him so much that they broke him. And it's like, well, Namor is a great character. That character, man. It's
This is the thing. I think there's going to be a definitive fatigue with superheroes and superhero movies.
Most definitely.
And it's because they're going to run into the same problem they did in the comics, which is they're not willing to have any really standout stories because standout stories require cost. And
Yeah.
what you're ending up with now is so many of these streaming stories, right, that are 3 seasons long, 4 seasons long, or just a one-off thing where it's got a beginning and an end, so you can do pretty much anything you want in that story, and it's not going to affect the future of it because it's got a termination date, right? This, however, as soon as that was the thing that broke my heart when I saw Infinity War. I was like, man, that would be so good if at the end they could have just left them dead, real cost. There was an opportunity to do something where everybody went to the movie, and I saw them sitting, like Helena and all of them, sitting there saying, oh my God, that was so depressing, so horrible and all that. But you knew that it had value to them. It meant something because of that cost. Even though they would say they didn't like it, it meant something because of the cost. And then as soon as you bring them all back, the cost is gone. Everything's back to lunch boxes and all that. But you have this now where you have these more concise set stories, beginning and end, where people know they can take that story and put it away, got the cost, got the lessons, all that stuff, and they can move on to the next one. So you don't have that same fatigue. This one, it's the same story over and over and over and over and over again.
You know what it seems like? You know what it seems like to me? It seems like those 1940s serials that they used to show weekly in the movie theaters. They want to make that for $50 to $500 million. They want to have that sort of episodic, like the cliffhanger at the end, and then he comes back in the next one, and it's mysteriously everything's okay. That works when you're making them for $10,000 an episode, but not when you're making it for $500 million an episode. That whole sort of weekly, what happens to our hero? The plane is crashing, and then suddenly he's in on a parachute.
Well, it especially doesn't work when you have the two different disparate styles existing in reality at the same time. So you as a consumer, you're sitting there looking at the
confusing.
One where you're looking at the one and you're knowing, okay, this is going to end this way. I know it's going to end this way. And then you have the, Game of Thrones, whatever other, series you want to throw in there, type of contemporary, series that you have now where you don't know what's going to happen. No one's got, no one's safe. And this one seems like a better ride to go on. So which one are you going to invest your time and money in? I don't need this, get rid of that. I want something over here so I can actually be entertained. I can actually feel fulfilled with that story. Mm-hmm. This is just, drivel. This is
I forget what we were watching the other day. We were watching something and, someone's having a big fight and I'm like, okay, I'm not invested in this at all because I know neither of these people are going to die because they're too important to the show. You know what I mean? I'm like, there's going to be a big fight and maybe one's going to be winning or whatever. Then the other person's going to like run away or get away or what, and I don't even remember what I was watching, but it was one of those things like, oh, okay, let's put a 10-minute fight in here. But I'm like, this person's important. That person's important. Nobody's in danger.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's no stakes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it feels on a visceral level so much less real and so much less fulfilling, even if it frustrates you to watch it. Even if you know, well, that's horrible, that is just awful, to see or whatever. Because it's more real, more visceral, it means something more. There's that cost. This other just doesn't have it.
It's one of those things where you constantly hear from these directors and producers, we want to show you a story that's just like the world outside your window. But the world outside my window has consequences. And none of their stories have consequences. And that's the part they don't get. It's like, well, I'm going to do this terrible thing and there's no consequence. But that's the real world.
But I think the thing is for viewers is, and I hear this a lot from folks, is that they don't like the movie that has the unhappy ending, the unfortunate cost to it. They go to the movies to forget real life. I think what we're talking about here is a show or a movie or what have you that has a cost associated with it. They are rare and people do watch them, but I don't know that there's enough people that the studios would go that direction more than they do.
I think they're going to be surprised to find out that
Yeah.
as things go, people are more and more into the ones that have cost. Look at,
Yeah.
even though I don't like it because, you know, it was kind of a dumb premise, but Squid Games, as an example. Squid Game's incredibly popular because people were looking at it to see, well, how's this going to play out? Who's going to die on this one? What's the, you know, that kind of thing. That's what's become
Consequence.
more. Yeah, that's what's become more consumed now, is that sort of setup, or Silo, or any of those
Well,
kinds
let
of
me
That's
give
things.
you
why Game
another
of
example,
Thrones.
right? Captain America: Winter Soldier
Yeah.
had
Yep.
stakes without having to kill everybody, or you know, like they literally changed the course of the Marvel Cinematic Universe because
Yeah.
no, Shield has been invaded by Hydra, and they're really like they almost took over the whole world. We basically had to tear down Shield in that movie, and that affected all the stuff. I mean, they were in the middle of Agents of Shield when that came out, and they basically torpedoed that show,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
it turns out it was bad guys running Shield the whole time. So like, there's an
Different
example of
universe.
some stakes, right?
Yeah.
And Shield has not come back. Right now,
No.
there's Sword in the late in the Marvels
Saber.
movie. Saber, is that what it is?
Yeah. Well, there's Sword and Saber. I think there's both.
Oh, is it okay? But my
Yeah.
point is, like, that was a thing that had consequences. Shield was like this big worldwide security organization, and Nick Fury's running it, and now he's an old man who's like, I used to have a bunch of, you know, assets, and now I don't, right? And so there's an
What they did to
example
that
of
character.
doing a thing
Oh.
with some stakes and consequences that changed the course of the world, but didn't mean you had to kill off a main character, but didn't mean you had to do a thing. Like, things happen, and it had some stakes, and that's still one of my favorite movies because it's got a good rewatchability factor.
Oh yeah.
And I felt like
Oh, it's great.
the story had
Yeah.
something that happened. The world was not the same at the end of the story. And too many Three's Company episodes, it's like, oh no, a thing happened and we had a wacky adventure. And then at the end of it, you go right back to the way things were, which I get is a formula for television shows. So you always have the same thing going on. But that's not what we want in our cinematic universe. So,
And I got a rant. Like, you brought up Nick Fury, what they did to that character, you know. And speaking of Winter Soldier, which was, I think, the height of his like coolness factor, when he was on that
Yeah.
street, and he
Mhm.
like they attacked him in the streets of DC, and he's just the biggest badass you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
put.
Exactly.
You know, but
No, Rich, you're cutting out again. Whatever you did
Yeah.
did not work.
And
You
I
got all
wanna say,
excited about
Kelly-
to make your point, and then it failed.
And I want to say,
Yeah.
Kelly, the choreography that you did with them to give him his Rex Kwon Do skills for the fight scenes in that movie was well done.
Well done.
Well done.
Yeah, good training.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good
If only
training.
they had
But what they
credited
did,
me properly, you know.
Yeah, giving you
Yeah,
your
I
the, bit
know.
where,
residual.
the bit where they tried to
Uncredited.
sweep his legs and he jumped up and then smacked him in the head. Yeah, that was.
but they
It
took
took,
well
they
it took
took one of the-
days to teach him that.
They took one of the coolest characters in the MCU and they turned him into just one of the worst characters in the MCU over the course of like 5 years. Oh, awful. Just an awful nation of a character. Terrible.
Indeed. I agree.
Didn't say anything. Didn't say anything.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
I didn't. Didn't say anything. I
glory.
just said that it's terrible.
Yeah.
The glory that is rich. Yes. Too bright, too good for this world. Too much.
I understand. I'm like the Human Torch when he goes Nova. Going back to the Fantastic Four, I went Nova.
Yeah. So
That's all you have to say from now on. Like, Rich, you went Nova.
No, I agree, and quite honestly, I like those types of movies. My girls like those types of movies. You know,
Which ones?
Where there's a cost associated.
Oh, I got you.
You know,
I
to
got
go
you.
back to that point.
Yeah.
Indy especially, who's very much a comic book nerd. You know, she wants things that have a real life sort of approach to it, where the good guy doesn't always win in the end.
yeah.
But will we get more of that? I don't.
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
not
know,
optimistic. But then again, I'm not optimistic about much.
Well, I don't. The only thing that gives me optimism about that as a surviving story type is that I think as a people, and I'm talking about the world, the human race, not just any one, but all of us. I think instinctually we are drawn more towards those types of stories. If you look at all of the old myths and fables and that
Yeah.
sort of thing, they generally have that kind of thing in them, right?
Yeah.
And even now, the ones that take the world by storm are those types of stories, like Squid Games, Last of Us, the different ones, like, or even Red Dead Redemption, Red Dead Redemption 2, that kind of stuff. Those are the stories that really seem to be just gobbled up, and remembered. And even if you look at the movies, the top 100, the ones that everybody loves, and all of that, even those, The Godfather, Shawshank, and all of that stuff. The Thing, of course.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
I think that Hollywood as a business has been spoiled with the amount of control that they've had over the narrative to be put out there. And now, one of the bad things is that as technology has gotten more and more pervasive that way, that we have much more access to all of those different types. And I think they've lost a large amount of that captive audience they had, and they have been greatly diminished because people have those other options, and they've been going to them. The bad side, of course, is that with that expounding amount of narratives out there for different stories, there is a large amount of crap out there, just bad.
Oh yeah, you just recycle the same storyline with some slightly
Yeah.
different premise. Yeah, the other thing I would tag on to that, Sean, is the issue that Hollywood, in large part, owns a lot of the IP that people are interested in watching. So I
Mhm.
mean that kind of puts the brakes on too much creation of something different than what Hollywood wants in some
Yeah.
regards.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that. But I do think there's more of it that gets out at this point. And so I think, I don't know, and I may be wrong, but over time, I just, I see them losing more and more market share
Hmm.
because of that, and
Yeah,
the Marvel thing is just an example of it.
but that will be the tipping point when the consumer stands up to say, "Hey, I want more of this thing," right? The old adage, "Vote with your wallet." If you
Yeah.
don't like what Marvel's putting out, stop saying it.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I have.
and eventually, there's no ROI on what they're putting out, and they got to change course. But will they? I don't know. I think there's a lot to be drawn from the comic books and the storylines that are currently out there. That
Yeah.
something like Infinity War doesn't have to be your big outing. There's other things to do. There's other stories to tell. But just bloody well tell them better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I will say this: I this morning when I got up, I watched the latest episode of Invincible on Amazon,
There you
and
go.
then
There's
I'm
another
bringing that up
example.
also with Astro City, right? So
Yeah.
here's two examples of the superhero genre where we have quote unquote Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Iron Man. We have all of these superhero tropes. You were like, oh, okay, you own the IP, I can't play with that, but I can create my own world
Yeah.
with
Exactly.
archetypal superheroes and tell stories with consequence without having to kill off Superman or without having to kill off Batman
Yeah.
because I can do it over here. And like I say, the Invincible is great. I
Yeah.
never read it as a comic because I thought his costume looked stupid with the little bug-eyed goggles, and I was just like so I never did it. And then my daughter had me watch up season 1, and then I went
That's
and
very
binged.
good.
I bought all of the graphic novels, like they come in these big thick
Yeah.
collected trades, and I binged all of them, and I was like, wow, this is great. You know what I mean? And then I've been a Astro
Yeah.
City fan forever.
Yeah, me
And
too.
Astro City's a one where you can really tell some stories
And see,
because it's
that's
not trying to, I need 100, I need 500 issues of Superman, right? I
yeah.
want to
Yeah.
keep it going monthly. They could just tell these short, little, 4, 5, 10 page mini
Yeah.
stories and be done with it. So
And
what were you gonna say?
Well, they have
that That one shows true creativity, by the way. Astro
Yeah.
City, as an example, shows
Yeah.
true creativity where when you have someone who's able, or a team who can do that sort of, you have so many stories you can bring in a character and end a character in one arc, or have them as a staple or some, because it's such a rich environment that way, and tell such good stories with them. And Astro City is an ongoing, long-term example of the fruitfulness of a setting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless of who you have as the staple. And so, man, one of the best Superman stories I've ever read was about Samaritan, you know?
Yes.
And I
Yes.
loved that story with Samaritan. I wish someone had thought to put together a story like that in, DC, and DC said yes, because I'm sure that it was pitched at some point, right? I'm sure it was pitched at some point and somebody said, no, that's too dark, can't do that. But the whole idea of him
Yep.
being able to hear and realize all these horrible things going on all the time,
Yeah, all the suffering in the world.
and
Yeah.
all that suffering. And as the person who is not only able to do that, but with the conscience where you're like, yeah, I got to do something about this.
Yeah.
How do you decide? How do you decide what to do? You're going to let
Yeah.
this lady die over here so you can do this thing over here. And that your entire life is going to
That's
be
all he
about
does.
saving.
Making
Right.
life or death
Yeah.
decisions, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cost of doing that, because the cost of doing that in one moment means you're letting something else happen over here, and then
Yeah.
having to
Can't
live with
sleep,
the consequences.
can't eat,
Man,
can't do anything.
yeah. Can't do anything. And well, not even just that part, but living with the consequences mentally
The guilt.
of what
Yeah.
just happened, and knowing you could have done something if you had chosen to help them. And how do you deal
Yeah.
with, man, that was such a good story. And you
Oh,
can't
yeah.
tell me there was a better, Superman story ever written anywhere about that sort of thing. Man, what
Well,
a good one,
Astro City, I mean, I have the entire series, every episode in hardcover on my shelf here, and it's one of the best written, best long-term comic series ever, and it's relatively unknown, which is amazing to
Yeah.
me.
Right. And
Like,
it's not even really a comic book series. It's a little bit more like Love, Death, and Robots, right? Where you're going to go,
Yeah.
you dip in and tell some stories.
Yes. Visionettes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I say,
And that's exactly the kind of format they should have to tell those on
Yes.
in a streaming
Yeah.
service.
and
That would
if
be
this
great.
was an HBO done Game of Thrones quality, recurring thing, right? Where unlike Game
Oh,
of
yeah.
Thrones, you don't have to watch every episode in order to know what's going
Yep.
on. And we're
No,
dipping
you
in
can
and
pick and
out.
choose anything.
Like, man,
Anything.
how good would that be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Astro City is one of those rare ones where it has they're so smart about how they do it, because each story individually stands its own, but they frame it in arcs using history as their touchstone. So like this is the 50s to this is the 60s to the 70s, and they have a whole cast of characters. A whole season could be just one arc, right? And then they have the overarching frame story of the world and how it all fits together. It's a genius creation. And again, but the you got to see the writers that write Astro City. They love it. They love the characters. They want to give them, like Alex Ross. I think, is it Kurt Busiek is the other writer on that?
Yeah.
Or Alex Ross, Kurt Busiek. And Alex Ross is one of the greatest comics artists in history. He's up there for me. He's up there. He's up there with Kirby and Byrne and all the greats. Perez. Like, just his particular niche that he's filled for a young guy. A relatively young guy. He's our age. I mean, he's an utter genius. But it's the love that he brings to the characters. He's like, well, I want to make sure that this brings across what the character was made on, and then now my expression of it pays homage to everything that came before, and then this is what I've added to it. But these are all his own creator-owned characters, things that he made. And they're absolute, like you said, Sean, it's an absolute work of genius. I can't believe that no one's picked up on Astro City. I think it's been optioned more than once.
Yeah.
And they've looked at it and they've just like, they're stupid. They
want an ongoing series in a linear storytelling format, because hey, season 1, season 2, season 3, like, we can keep making money, because it's not a movie, right? You can't make an Astro City 2-hour movie. That doesn't really fit. I mean, maybe if you pick the right couple of stories, you could
Yeah.
tell a movie set in that world. But like, I can understand why somebody hasn't picked it up and run with it. But with the success of Love, Death, and Robots and some of these other things, like it might be, and the failure of so many streaming shows, right?
Yeah.
It might be time to rethink your paradigm and go, maybe
Yeah.
we do want this one. Oh, let me just. It doesn't matter which one you watch. It's a self-contained. The same way. Twilight Zone was the same way. Didn't matter which one you watched, right? It was just like, oh, here's a cool story, half an
Tales
hour,
from the
40
Crypt.
minutes long, or whatever.
And as we all know, Twilight Zone didn't work.
Yeah, that's
Tales from the Crypt, The Outer Limits. It's that same, exactly.
Yeah.
It's that same frame story kind of thing that, that you have the universe, its rules are established, and then you tell the stories within it, and they don't necessarily have anything to do with each other. They're just set in the same framework, right? Much smarter way to go about it.
Well, we've solved all the world's problems yet
again. Good for us.
Next time, folks, just as a teaser, Kelly had a topic that I think would be just scintillating for.
Did I?
I know we didn't get to it. I'm sorry.
Yes. A stupid,
like a disco ball,
if you will,
so, shining above us, scintillating.
All right, boys. Well, until next time, we'll see you.
Okay. Bye.
We're not leaving out the city.
See you.
Bye.
Love you.
This concludes our Speak Nerd and Enter broadcast.